It's interesting. Cleaning never used to look like this, right? So like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, all of cleaning was powder. And, it was in plastic-free packaging. And then, during World War II and a little bit after, this massive middle-class boom came, everyone bought machines, and then the industry went liquid. And alongside liquid, so much plastic came along, right? And then basically in the late 90s, seventh generation came on the scene saying, why do we have to use petroleum-based cleaners? What about plant? But they did not work at that time. They've gotten really, really good now, but at that time it didn't work. So the historic challenge was efficacy.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Ryan Lupberger. He's the CEO and co-founder of Cleancult. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Ryan, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so personally, born and raised in Boulder, Colorado. So always been around natural products, food, organic, everything. Parents are more or less hippies, so grew up kind of in that space. And, kind of my journey here, I actually worked for a company called the Unreasonable Institute when I was younger and fell in love with social entrepreneurship. So it's one of the world's largest social venture accelerators. Continued on this path, went out the East Coast and went to business school at Babson. And when I was there, I actually looked at the back of my bottle of laundry detergent, didn't see any ingredients listed. And that kind of started me on this journey. So Boulder kid at heart, but now live in New York City.
I love it. Awesome. Well, it sounds like you've had an interesting journey bringing you now. I'm curious to hear more about, like you said, not finding the ingredients. So why don't you start and let's dive into Cleancult.
Yeah. So, always believe kind of business could be a force for good, but also scale. And that's always been our vision, right? Is how do we build a great business, but do it also when it challenges big problems, right? And I think the both are key. So didn't really have a passion for cleaning products early on. Was not, a TikTok star. At least there wasn't even TikTok when we started this business. But it was really just kind of a happenstance moment. As I was in business school, I looked at the back of my bottle and didn't see any ingredients, right? And I'm a Boulder kid, so it was, why aren't there any ingredients here? There are ingredients on food and personal care products and almost everything else we put on our skin, right? But it was like, this doesn't make any sense. So the more research I did, the crazier the industry became. And currently nationwide, there's no regulation for what goes into our cleaning products, right? So EPA, USDA, FDA, there's a gap in regulation, and there's a lot of toxins, carcinogens, you name it, right? So UK compared to the US, they actually ban or are currently under review about 1,500 chemicals that we do not ban here in the States, right? So it's just like it just got this ball rolling is why are there so many chemicals in our products? And then I looked for all the better products, Method, Mrs. Meyer, seventh generation, baby organics, and they all use plastic. Right. And it was like, how can the better for the world cleaners use so much petroleum packaging? And I kept walking retailers and man, it's just like a wave of plastic when you walk into all these retailers. So kind of just out of a need personally, it was like, there has to be a better way. And I tried DIY and vinegar and mixing and just spit, really everything. And nothing worked. And I didn't want to become a scientist and it was too complex and too complicated. I was like, this isn't for me. And kind of had this aha as why not milk cartons, right? So we spent from 2016 to 2019 in building a clean cleaning system with clean packaging and even cleaner formulations at a price point that's comparable to the market. So we are the first company in the world to put soap cleaners and detergents in a milk carton. And now we paired that with a filled and refillable aluminum bottle. So that's a little bit about us.
I love that. I love that. So it sounds like, you saw a need in the market and you've been able to really grow and expand on that. So kind of come 2019, talk to me a little bit about that go-to-market.
Yep. So for 2.5, really 3 years, it was challenging, right? Because we really wanted to iterate and people say go to market. I think there's soft launches probably 3 or 4 times for startups, right? So our let's call it line in the sand is 2019. We did Kickstart in 2016, Indiegogo in 2017, pre-launches in 2018, really trying to find our niche, right? And first it was cleaning products with the cleanest ingredients. And then we furthered the packaging, but it wasn't until this moment that clicked soap and cartons in 2019 that everything came together, right? So finally we have our own machinery, 16 patents, a bunch of trademarks. we are still the only company in North America doing this. It's really challenging to do because when you think of soap in paper packaging, it attacks, it leaks, it explodes. Like you name it, we went through it, right? Like 6 inches of soap on our floor in the early days from leaking product, really hard. But so when we launched finally, mostly D2C, right? And this was when D2C, frankly, was a little bit more inexpensive to do. So started as a D2C brand in 2019, and our first to market really big push was long form YouTube advertising. And we had a, arguably viral video called basically Cleaning Up the Cleaning Industry. And it was actually about my co-founder and myself and how we started the business in Puerto Rico. So we didn't start in New York, we actually started in Puerto Rico. There's a long story to why. And it was really comical. We didn't have our shirts on for 20 seconds of the video. There was plastic. And it did really, really well, right? So that built us to, north of, let's call it 7 figures in online revenue, all through YouTube, Google, Meta advertising. And that was kind of the first push in 2019 through 2020.
Interesting.
Yep.
And I want to hear a little bit more, you talked about the building of the product, kind of the market need that you saw, but I want to hear a little bit more about the role of retail in your business and how does that play into bringing sustainable cleaning options to the masses?
Yeah, so we started the business. We needed to get scale, fundraising, product market fit. I mean, we're on formulation V8 right now, right? We're on packaging V6. It takes time, right? It really does take a long time to build a consumer brand, whether people notice or not, right? We say like overnight, 10-year success story, right? So with all that said, D2C from 2019 through 2021 built our business, right? We were able to close a Series B, build a pretty substantial brand. But we've always known that cleaning is in retail and that's where we'll scale. It's also where they shop, right? Roughly 98% plus of cleaning products are bought in store still. So we've always known that. And then frankly, D2C stopped quicker than we expected because of the iOS shift, because of COVID and because of shipping increases. So when we started the brand, we could ship products for roughly $6. During the peak, it was $14. So a lot of our margin was effectively eviscerated, right? It became very challenging to ship online. So there's a host of factors that led it to us. But basically, we had some outreach. We started with Bed Bath & Beyond and CVS and some smaller retailers. That went well. Took a big step back, did another rebrand for retail. And there's a whole reason why. And launched in Walmart in 2023. So earlier this year, and I can't believe it's still 2023, but we launched roughly 15 SKUs across hand soap, dish soap, laundry, and all-purpose cleaner in Walmart nationwide. And the whole vision, again, is how do we meet shoppers where they are, but reduce plastic in the categories? And it's a problem shoppers are looking for. It's also a problem retailers are looking for. So we really tried to pair that value prop for both.
I love that. And that was going to be one of my questions, talking about the products specifically that are in that retail kind of market. So you mentioned hand soaps, kind of laundry, dish soap.
Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about kind of, the process of determining what cleaning products really you wanted to target.
Yeah. So in our category, you have trial categories, efficacy led, and then growth, right? So it's really actually very different pillars for us. So we usually start with hand soap because people are least loyal to hand soap brands, and you'll have 12 right around the house. And there's a lot of shifting, a lot of changing, and it's less efficacy led. It's usually experience. So, aluminum bottle looks really cool on shelf, or a carton looks really interesting in your home, and people will say, hey, why is that, right? It's a really good talking point for people. Or people love Mrs. Meyer's because it's scent led and it's luxurious and a beautiful experience. So we found in a lot of consumer research that's where we started with the Cleancult brand, right? But then people jump to usually dish or all purpose, right? And most people, unless they're buying that blue bottle, will usually go for a brand that they trust, right? So right after that trial in hand, we found that people look for dish and all purpose. But it's a little bit more efficacy, and it's also like use cases, right? When you have a dirty bathroom, you're probably not going to use all-purpose cleaner, right? You're going to use something that disinfects or something really hard. But there's a lot of toxins in that. There's a lot of concerns. And at the same time, like when you have guests over, you also want to put out something nice. We found that was a really easy jump after they believed in the brand in dish or in hand soap, right? And then laundry, as we found the last pillar here, is people are very concerned about the skin. So roughly 3% of the weight of your clothes, it's actually leftover laundry detergent. It stays in your body, it's on your sheets, it's everywhere. So that was the last jump. But when you look at that laundry machine, that's $1,000 worth of clothes, right? Or 500. So it's really risky to put an unknown brand in that machine, right? So we found like that was the last pillar. So by creating this whole platform, we were able to really incentivize the retailers and then build up a whole system to reduce plastic in people's homes.
So it sounds like a lot of the work not only was building brand awareness and kind of that name recognition, but also trust in the product too.
Yeah, and your brand awareness takes time, right? Like we built the D2C trial with we call them the Cleancult, right? Our core customers, the movement of no plastic fanatics, right? That's always been kind of the language we've used. It's still new, right? Even though we're in Walmart, we've also launched now in Albertsons, Safeway launched nationwide. We launched in Kroger. Brand awareness is tricky, right? A lot of it is on shelf, which is why we win, because a carton's such a unique form factor, right? So it has this wow stopping power. But it's a challenge. I think in the end, it just takes a long time. And I think a lot of CPG founders, entrepreneurs think it's going to happen quicker. And this D2C rush that happened 3 years ago, 5 years ago, artificially changed people's mindset on that. And what we're seeing and finding, it just takes time. It takes time of being on shelf, talking to your customers, gaining trial across the board.
And, talking a little bit about common misconceptions, I think that leads me to my next point is that people think that they can do it overnight and they can't.
Right.
But specifically, maybe not necessarily specifically to Cleancult, maybe to kind of the eco-friendly cleaning products. Is there any common misconceptions that you tend to hear often?
Yeah, it's interesting. Cleaning never used to look like this, right? So like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, all of cleaning was powder. And, it was in plastic-free packaging. And then, during World War II and a little bit after, this massive middle-class boom came, everyone bought machines, and then the industry went liquid. And alongside liquid, so much plastic came along, right? And then basically in the late 90s, seventh generation came on the scene saying, why do we have to use petroleum-based cleaners? What about plant? But they did not work at that time. They've gotten really, really good now, but at that time it didn't work. So the historic challenge was efficacy, right? That more or less has changed and things are still pretty good. I would say consumer people are still worried about using something that kill in certain situations, but generally people believe, right? Then we had this conception of being dark green, right? In the kind of like mid 2000s. That's when Method and Mrs. Myers came around, right? And they said, how about we make eco-friendly cleaning accessible, attractive, beautiful, and modern for my home? And they also built brands on that, right? The last, I think, core misconception we have are both in price. People think a lot of eco-friendly is more expensive, and that's becoming and is frankly not true anymore. So our bottles are $5, same price as leading brands, and our refills are $7.50 to $8, right? So roughly price parity with the market. And I think the last conception then is there aren't alternatives in plastic, right? And you're seeing a big wave of different companies trying to solve this. You have tablets that make water soap. You have gels. You have concentrates. Everyone's trying to solve it a slightly different way. We believe we have the best solution, obviously, for retail specifically and generally. But that's kind of the last problem here is that this is how it is. This is how it's always been. We really fundamentally think it could shift. It's one of the visions we started this business, and I think it is shifting around us.
I want to double click on something that you said talking about the refills as well, and just highlighting that because a lot of people are pushing to be more conscious of, reusing plastic. So, you could still use one of the old bottles that you have in your house, but purchase a refill from Cleancult in order to, not only try the product, but also utilize kind of that eco-friendly conscious push, right?
Totally. Yeah. So we frankly, we would love you to use anything to get into the brand, right? So certain people have hand soap dispensers built in, right? And we love partnering with those because you can refill it directly. Certain people have, pre-built dish dispensers that you just pour that directly in. Certain people have laundry machines that you have auto dose drawers, right? So we're really trying to give optionality. So you could use our bottles and use them once and continue to refill. You could use your own bottles, but we're really trying to create a very easy and accessible way to reduce plastic in people's homes.
I love that. That's fantastic. So, Ryan, you've talked a lot about different products that currently Cleancult offers. Is there anything exciting on the horizon that you might be able to share?
Yeah. So, recently we just launched our new filled and refillable aluminum bottles. So we started just as refills. We then launched refillable glass bottles. And then we've really completed this suite, we believe, by offering at the same price as filled plastic bottles, our new filled and refillable aluminum. So they're the first ever filled and refillable aluminum dish bottles and all-purpose bottles in the market, available nationwide at Walmart and Albertson, Safeway, and more on the horizon. So that's been our most recent major launch, and we've solved for the refill. How do we get more people into the brand and do it in a really easy price point? We do have some really exciting launches on the horizon. They will not be public until January, February, but we're further innovating in kind of the platform of no plastic.
That's amazing. Well, I can't wait to keep track on Cleancult, all the exciting innovations, like you said. As we start to wrap up this conversation, Ryan, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with that we didn't necessarily hit on, whether it be advice, anything about the eco-friendly cleaning product industry, anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we've seen is a lot of brands, the graveyard of startups. There's not many startups now in household cleaning because of gross margin issues, growth, CapEx. It's a very challenging space, but partially because there's a graveyard of 10, frankly, since we've begun, that thought they could change people's behavior. And it's not possible, right? So I think to all the entrepreneurs, the founders, try to have your solution meet shoppers, retailers in the market where they are. It's really hard to change behavior, right? And so we've spent the last 7 years trying to reduce plastic, but meeting people where they are. Same formulations are better ingredients, same price points, same retailers, similar behavior, refill, but in plastic, it's in paper. Same bottles, but instead of plastic, it's aluminum, right? So that's probably the biggest learning is, 5-10 years ago, I would have loved to believe shoppers would evolve faster. And it takes a long time. And it's really expensive and really challenging. So it's hard to shift the market in that way. So I think it's just being really aware of the solution.
Yeah, being aware and then patient too, it sounds like.
Yes, patient, long time, dog years.
For better or worse, patient always. Well, awesome.
Exactly.
Well, Ryan, like I said, this has been a terrific, insightful conversation. I love kind of everything that the movement that you're doing with refillable cartons. I think it's fantastic. And I really appreciate you sharing your story on Business Ninjas today.
And likewise, thanks again for having me today.
Yeah, great to have you.